of software is for me very interesting because it's entirely self-contained in terms of translation. I don't need to translate anything else for this to be 100% translated, which is quite unusual in software actually, because software is usually built from components, and usually you'll need to translate all of the components. So this, a professional translator can usually do in under a day. You need to know some obscure color names, but that's about the hardest thing you'll need to do. And it's an extremely nice tool for demonstrative purposes. It's very colorful. You can make it a very, very visual display and so on. And this is a way to reach people who are interested in education, and it's a way to reach concerned parents, which is always a very interesting species. It's a very simple program and not a lot of translation. I'm lucky that somebody in South Africa is maintaining this, so I don't need to do this. And whenever I want to show people what Afrikaans software looks like, especially if they are parents with young kids, it's a very nice tool to convey my message about what it is and why it is useful. Because the message of why translated software is useful is always clearer when you bring children into it, or older people. In this case, the children are, and it makes nice noises if you've got speakers plugging. It's terrible for me, but just the children love it. I don't really want to show the software itself, but just the idea that translating that little bit will be powerful. Next I want to show, let me just find it, the text editor. Now this is a very basic program on the surface about editing plain text files, something like Notepad on Windows. But I'm just going to show it as an example of software components. Now, everything you'll see on screen will be very plain, or mostly plain stuff. Look, if we go through the toolbar, that's new, open, save, print, undo, redo, cut, copy, paste, find, replace. Alright, so these are things we almost recognize from 90% of the software we use. These are very commonly known idioms. Even if you look at the menus at the top, it's file, edit, view, search, tools, documents, help. And these things reoccur a lot. Now, we talked earlier in the day about translation memory and reusing translations, and that's fine. But the problem is that if you want to go retranslate that every time, you still need to do it every time, even though you can do it quickly. But a lot of these translations are built from library components that the programmers use to translate it. So in reality, most of those are only translated once. That's what I'm quickly going to show now. This is the library file that I'm now going to translate. It's called GTK. It really contains these basic things like OK and cancel and yes and no and so on. On the left-hand side, you see the English. But really, you'll see that a lot of this looks very technical and uninteresting, and we can scroll through all sorts of error messages and really, 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 really uninteresting things until we get, let me just look actually for it. Here we go. This one, you can see it says information, and the programs were cute enough to tell us it's a stop label. So whenever you have an information dialog popping up, that is the title of that little window. And the idea is that if you translate it once in this file, it will be reused everywhere in the GNOME system. And not all software is built in the same way, but many are working like that. So what I often encourage translators to do, I remember we had a conversation about this recently, is if you just start by translating this, it is probably about 60 words, and it covers probably about 20% of the text people will see on their screen, because you constantly have yes and no questions, OK and cancel, information, warning, error, question, and these things. And if you look at some of the others, you'll recognize them as well. It's about, add, apply, bold, cancel, CD-ROM, clear, close, connect. And some of these you see are not that common, but yeah, the clipboard functions, copy, cut, delete, paste will be somewhere here, and I'm not going to go through all of them. And these are the things that, if we're going to translate the whole file, it's a humongous amount of words. It's about 3,000 words. Some of it's very difficult error messages, some things that normal translator might not even know what they mean. But these things, because you use them a lot, will be much easier to understand and have a much higher impact. Now the question is, how do you do that? And that is not as easy as it should be, but I'll just I don't think you are interested in the exact nitty-gritty of which tools are used to do that. But basically we have a tool that can search for these references here. I don't know if you can see the selection there at the top. It says the programming file where the program stored this English text. And I have a file where I can say, please extract all of the translations that occur in that file, because now you can see that all of these come from the same file. And I can just extract those, and somebody like Vox Humanitatis can send it to the 4 or 5 teams that are in dire straits, that only have a little bit of time, people with disconnected activities, low computer literacy, even low literacy in their own language. And even though it will take them longer than we might expect, it's not a humongous amount of work, and it makes a big impact. When you click on File Open, that's the same for every application in the whole GNOME desktop environment, whether it's your text editor, your web browser, or your email program, and it's the same if you go File Save and so on. And that just means that those types of interactions can then start to be in the user's language and can have a bigger impact in affecting the way they think about it. Just to extend the example with a slightly more complex one, which is not that different, just a little bit more subtle, is a text editor. This is the text editor I showed earlier, and the translation I'm going to show now is the translation of this piece of software. It's called gedit, it's a text editor. Now we might see here the first one is a description of the program, it says edit text file, the next one says text editor, sort of just the purpose, and so on. But as soon as we go here in the fourth one, you will see it starts getting extremely technical very quickly. A custom font that will be used for the editing area. This will only take effect if the use default font option is turned off. Now you need to be quite dedicated to translate that, and somebody was that dedicated in Afrikaans, as you can see. I can't remember if it was me, I doubt. No, it's not me. But the issue is that if you know what this is used for, you can make a better decision about if you want to do that. Now, we've seen this always with translators. And Sabina, perhaps you can confirm that, but if you get a translation job, you translate everything and you send it back. And that's the only way you attack it. You never tell the client, oh no, this was really hard, I skipped it. I mean,
the only way you have is asking further explanation sometimes.
Yes.
But, okay, very often you get your translation and they don't give you even a hint of what you're going to translate. So you have software in front of you, don't even know what it's going to be used for.
And the issue also is that what we've seen when we use translators that are not in our office and they're not trained in our organization, they don't know the software. They might not even know what type of software, what it means. They might not even be sure what a text editor is. And I mean, some of this gets really technical about certain programming options and very advanced text editing features like regular expressions. And that's very difficult to translate. And the problem is that if you've got a really competent translator, you might get a good translator, but you might actually get a harmful, potentially dangerous translation in the sense that it will mislead the user. So if we could, we should try to simply not translate everything. Because the chances are that, especially in languages where the technical terms are not that well developed, we might even be making it worse by translating it at least in the start. And I say that with the best of intentions. It might be good, and we're talking about languages really starting out, to try to only find the most useful stuff. And once again, we will get our clue from the programmer, the location where this text comes from, the programming's comment. Now this is quite technical, I just happen to know the answer, but it's the same for all applications in GNOME. It says something.schemas.something, and the schemas I know are really hidden configuration messages for technical people who want to configure the text editor in an advanced way. And if we look carefully at everything beneath this, if you look at the tooltip, you see it's something.schemas, something.schemas, and I can scroll down, and I'll find probably about 10% or something of the file, and probably the hardest translations being these really unimportant ones. And we can easily, we already have a script that can easily just filter them out and do that. We can sometimes do similar things with web-based applications. Some of you might know Drupal. I think your website is also running Drupal. Yeah. In some cases, the translations can be distinguished between the user-facing strings and the administration strings. Now, if you know you are the site administrator, and you're fine with one translation, you don't want to spend that time on that because you've got more useful things to do. Yeah. And that's never the type of relationship proprietary vendors have with their translators, because there's usually a big divide between the company and the agency, and it's just too much work to find a way of prioritizing things. So it's just you